All right, you bunch of yahoos, strap yourselves in for another episode of Dan and Don's Toxic Masculinity.
In other words, shut up, sit up, and pay attention.
And here we go, and welcome back to another episode of Toxic Masculinity, where we offer up our own political satire approach to opinions, opinionated. We're just a couple of crotchety old farts that have a bad habit of speaking the truth, but won't let a few facts get in the way of a good old story. We believe in America and Americans, and if this isn't for you, well, we suggest that you change the channel now. We still believe in freedom of speech and will rub your face into the cow pie of reality. Without further ado, my cohort in crime, none other than the man of myth, men, the Don the Predator Fry, and I, his trusty sidekick, Dan to be Severn. And I'm not sure if he's got his sidekick, Quinn, with him there today, but Quinn is his faithful dog, bulldog that he normally has with him that does her very own cameo type reports. And today's guest is none other than Greg Gagne, who began his professional career in the American Wrestling Association, where he gained recognition as a tag team specialist and won multiple AWA World Tag Team Championships. He also has trained many stars in the world of professional wrestling today. So that's all I have. We're going to get to a lot more good stuff right there because you and I had the chance to sit down and do a lot of chatting at the International Professional Hall of Fame.
Yes,
so
we did.
That was
Dan,
actually.
I want to apologize to you. Last night, I went online just to look at your background, and I knew you were a fantastic amateur wrestler and an Olympic champion, but I did not know that you wrestled pro. I had no idea.
Please go ahead. You can say a few more kind things. I got some more time here.
No, I mean, I went down that list, and the credentials you have are phenomenal, and what you've done for amateur wrestling, for pro wrestling, it's beyond what anybody I know in the sport has done.
Yeah.
And I really apologize for not knowing that background on you.
Oh, no apology. I mean, I'll just say life is so busy for everyone. It's kind of hard to know who you're talking to at times. I mean, I've been in the same boat there at different times. It was when I was being first approached about working for the NWA, that they wanted to put the strap on me. I mean,
what year was that?
Oh gosh, I'm trying to think right now because I mean, my would have been right around 1992 time frame.
92, yeah.
Because as of the 1992 Olympics, the NCAA came down with a new ruling that athletes could be both amateur and professional simultaneously. So that's literally when I crossed the line at that point that I could be a professional wrestler, because that was what the opportunities were for me at that point. That I was being approached by a lot of smaller organizations to turn pro, and I kept thinking, gosh, I can make a buck and still this. And I didn't want to tell none of my amateur wrestling buddies because they all looked down upon it.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
You know? And that's where's that going? But this was an opportunity for me, and I'm thinking, well, maybe they look down, or maybe because they didn't get the opportunity to do that. I looked at it in a couple of different ways, and I kept thinking it's an opportunity that I don't want to kick myself in the pants down the road that I didn't at least try something.
Mm-hmm.
But on a kind of a little sidebar of that, when the thought of the NWA wanting to put that NWA strap around me, I think there were only like 3 or 4 promoters left for that organization, period.
Yeah,
and
AWA.
And I had never met Jim Cornette at this juncture in life. I never met him. I knew who he was just from watching professional wrestling, and he was always that tennis racket wielding manager that said almost anything that would come out of his mouth right there. So I only knew him in that sense. And I don't know who made the phone calls, because I know there's like Dennis Carluzzo and a couple of the people that I was dealing with that were the last of the 3 of the last promoters who reached out to Jim Cornette to somehow that I would be at the arena to watch a match take place, and somehow something would happen to where now an impromptu match is going to break out between Chris Candido and myself. And he's going to let me go over on his champion. I'm thinking, this man has never met me before. He doesn't know what kind of a character I am, what my background is. And I'm thinking, and this guy is going to let me go to his organization, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and let me go over on his champion. I'm thinking, what a leap of faith he had. But I mean, I like Jim in the sense that he loves the business,
Yeah.
and you can actually tell when he starts talking about it how excited he gets. You can see the child that fell in love with it so many decades ago, and he just wants to try to make some kind of rational rhyme and reason of professional wrestling, which you've been involved in the industry long enough. There are times when you're pulling the hair out of your head. There's like going, it makes no rhyme or reason, you know?
Yeah. Well, there were some, unbelievable characters. And, of course, Verne, he started back in 1950, 49, actually, on the DuPont network out of Chicago. And it was really funny because he had his first match in 1949 in Minneapolis. He wrestled at University of Minnesota, Big Ten champion, NCAA champion a number of times.
Yeah. So he comes from the same background,
same
collegiate wrestling.
background. And Verne's philosophy, was when you got in the ring, you had to know how to wrestle. And that's the way he taught all of us. And over the years, he trained 144 different wrestlers, and only 2% of them didn't make main event caliber.
Wow.
But when he was in the AWA, he was tell the story. His first matches with this Abe King Kong Cashy, a big old rugged guy. And about 15 minutes into the match, and he's got his buddies, Bud Grant, who ended up coaching the Vikings, played football with them. There's Billy By and this Jim Malosky and Harvey Solin, four of his buddies with the football team, were in the front row. And Verne was on the ropes and Cashy was choking him, and they jumped up and he leaned over and he said, "Sit down, punks." And they all sat down and were quiet the rest of the match. But Verne wrestled about 19 minutes that night, and then they told him he was too small. So they sent us to, we lived in a trailer, got a trailer, my mom, Verne, and I was born in 48, so I was quite young. We went to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the first week there, he won the NWA light heavyweight championship. And we made that circuit around Louisiana and Texas and Oklahoma. And then he gets a call from Fred Colder out of Chicago. And Fred says, "Hey, Verne, we'd like to bring you to Chicago. If you're going on national TV, and with your background and everything, we really would like to have you." So they fly Verne into Chicago. So he tells the story. So he gets into Chicago, gets down to the arena, and there's about 30 guys in the locker room. And Fred Colder, the promoter, says, "Verne, here's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to dress you up as a Martian. We're going to lower you down from the ceiling." He says, "The hell you are, Fred. I'll tell you what, I got my wrestling boots and my tights. I'm going down to the ring. What do you got, 30 guys here? They can come in one at a time, two at a time, or three at a time. If I can't beat them all, I'll quit." Well, nobody got in the ring with him. Nobody got in the ring with him. So he ended up wrestling in his tights and his trunks. And in 1950, he was the first athlete besides Babe Ruth to make over 100 grand.
Unbelievable.
So he was kind of the major star on there. They'd bring Lou Thez in, and Verne was the light heavyweight champion. Lou was the NWA heavyweight champion. And, guys like Dick the Bruiser, Hardboiled Haggerty, Yukon Eric, Don Leo Jonathan, all those names from the past, big stars in the 50s. But that's how he got going. And then in 1960, he bought into the Minneapolis Wrestling Organization and ran the AWA from then until McMahon put us out of business. And he was the number one promoter. And, our matches were as real as they could be, because if we couldn't wrestle, you couldn't work for Verne.
Yeah, well, that was one thing that I was always saying. The marquee says professional wrestling. Yep. Please give us some wrestling. I mean, when you just see people that go out there and they flex, or they talk. Yeah. I'm like going, I always loved it when, as I'm getting to know whoever I'm supposed to be working with that night for the first time ever, I always try to ask them, what is your actually athletic background? What kind of sports did you play? Did you actually wrestle at some point in time? Because, I just want to just be able to do some basic types of moves, be able to take someone down, get on down there. Can you do like a Granby roll? Can you do a switch? Can you do a sit out, turn in? Can you do an official stand up? I mean, and most of these guys, you take them down to the mat, they're lost the moment they touch that mat.
Lost, completely lost. I mean, Verne's camp, we went 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. And we started out with free squats, and we had to build up to doing 1,000 nonstop in the first hour.
Wow.
And then we'd get up in the ring. And then the next one was more calisthenics in the ring. They had things where you'd stand on your head in the turnbuckle and your feet up there and roll on your neck. And then you would, I mean, in my class had Ric Flair, Ken Patera, Jim Brunzell, the Iron Sheik, Bob Bruggers, and myself. And Bruggers was the only one that really didn't make it, but he was about 32 when he started and came out of pro football. But they'd hit a drill where you'd sit on your hands and knees, and then Patera was 340 at the time. He'd sit on my back facing my ass, and then he would do a sit up, and you'd have to push him up with your neck.
Yeah. Again, that's where both guys get a workout, because most young people
and do all the in and out, an hour of that. Then we did an hour of holds and counter holds, and then an hour of bumps, learning how to protect yourself. And then we did an hour at the last, then we do an hour on the ropes, and shit, when you start hitting them, it tears all the skin off you. You're black and blue and sore. And then the last hour, he'd take us across and we'd run sprints, 10 yards, stop for 10, run 10, all the way down to this lake, which is about a quarter mile away, quarter mile back, then across the street where he had it was a river, and there was these big bluffs. We'd have to run up and down those. And Patera came in at 340, Flair at 290. Patera came out at 310, Patera and Flair at 260. And it would be pitch black. And you'd see them just come. They would be about a mile behind us, just walking in. But his camps were just, they were like that. And he started that back in the early 60s, 50s, actually, late 50s, training guys, and 144. He put more. I'm
just trying to think how many people would even survive that kind of training today. I mean, it's almost too physical.
It is, yeah. Well,
it's each generation I see right now, it becomes a little bit more of a softer generation. I mean, there are certain sports where you got some rugged type of individuals that come out of it, but as a whole, a softening of society, especially I say of American society, because we have so many good things that most Americans don't realize. That you got a light that you hit a switch, it turns on. You got air conditioning you can turn on. You got food that you can have easy access to, and you got indoor plumbing versus outdoor. I always say, I remember going to my grandparents' home and seeing they actually were high end. They had an outhouse, but it had two people could sit in there and take care of business. You can have someone to chat with.
You can take your girlfriend in there with you.
So it was pretty comical. And ironically, that outhouse that I'm talking about, it's actually going through several generations. Not the exact same outhouse, but we had an outhouse up at our the cabin that we had up in the northern part of Michigan. But that same outhouse, I'll bet that outhouse has got to be easily 60 some years old now.
Still got it,
but it's still in the family. It's like the family heirloom.
Fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's kind of, people just don't realize it until you don't have certain things of what are the necessities of life.
Yeah,
we ain't gonna move it out to your house out here, Dan.
Well, I don't think I ever thought about that there, Don.
Prop it in the front yard, man.
put some nice flowers around it. Come on.
Make a nice decoration there.
Just have like just something about window side there over the, hey, Frank, how's it going? Yelling at the neighbors.
Don't bother me for a while.
Yeah, get your dog out of my yard. I don't want him crapping in my yard.
Terrific.
Well, Vern, what occupies? I'm curious. Okay, I mean, you got involved inside of a family business, and so what? Did you feel like you were just compelled? You had to do it?
No, actually, I want to play pro football, and I went to school at Minnesota, played football there for a year. They moved me from quarterback to defensive back. And I didn't like that. And Wyoming had recruited me as a quarterback. So I transferred out there and played football out there. And I came home one Christmas and I said, Dad, I think I'd like to wrestle. He says, what makes you think you can wrestle? Well, shit, from when I was a little guy, he'd always take me downstairs and move the furniture, and then we'd have to wrestle. He'd show me how to, switch and side roll, and then he'd tie me up and he would reverse it all the time. And this went on, Dan. I came back from Wyoming my senior year for winter break. And he says, come on, let's go in the living room. And I said, shit. So we go over there and we're going. And he got me hooked. And I'm like, shit. So I gave him a little elbow in the nose and he cracked my ribs.
Oh, you're kidding me.
No.
Wow.
Now I got to go back to the University of Wyoming and we have winter ball. And I go back there with cracked ribs. And the coach said, what's wrong with you? You're not hustling. I said, well, I had to wrestle my dad. We do this thing all the time, and he teaches me all these moves, and he cracked my ribs. And of course, they're laughing their ass off,
Oh, sure, because
I took shit all the time. The rest of, from there on, it was tough. But no, he was quite the personality, and he liked it. And when we finished the camp, he turned to us and he said, now you guys, you can go anywhere in the business and you don't have to be afraid of anybody.
A capable professional. Yeah.
Yeah. So they send Jim, my partner, Jim Brunzell, and I down to Atlanta. Sit down in the locker room, and a guy named Brute Bernard is there with his manager, Gary Hart. So I went over and I sat by him. I said, hi, I'm Greg Gagne. I better be careful what I say here, but he said, your father's a prick. And I said, well, I'm sure he feels the same way about you. And he looked at me and he got up in my face and I got up. So he walked into another locker room. So I said to Brunzell, come on, we're going to go in there. We'll follow him in. So I went back in and sat down next to him. I said, okay, do we have a problem or not? He said, no problem. But it really woke us up to the respect that the people that came out of Verne's camp got from other professionals around. I mean, he went back, guys like he trained Larry Henning, Lars Jean, and Ole Anderson. The list goes on and on. And the people that came out of that camp, and they all made it, and they all made it big, except about 2% of the guys.
Yeah, no, again, you're always going to have a certain group that, I'll just say life kind of happens to certain people. So, but still, that's an incredible record of, success.
Yeah. Nobody else in wrestling has done that. Now the WWE, they've got their own camps, they train them, but, it's such a different style now. I mean, it's just not, it's all action. To me, it's like
it's high spot, high spot, high spot. Yeah.
Yeah, just boom, 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 boom. It was what made professional wrestling, I think, was the story.
The storytelling.
And I tell people, either people are going to like you or they're not going to like you. But you have to get that emotion. You have to emotionally get them involved into your personality. And once you do that, it's a home run. And it's fun.
Did you work in Japan?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I was like that.
We wrestled. We had a real Verne was really good about giving guys time off. We had the whole month of May and the first 2 weeks of June off. And then it started up. We only ran maybe 3 towns a week during the summer up until September. Then we went hard until the end of April, just about every night. So Jim and I were the tag team champions, and we're going to Japan for a tag team tournament. The night before, we're in a cage match in Salt Lake City, and this Jerry Blackwell had thrown me over the top rope, and my foot caught the rope and it just twisted it up. Jeez, my knee, I woke up in the morning, it was all swollen up. Oh my God, we got to get on a plane. We got to go to LA and then to Tokyo. So the girls gave me some ice, put on my knee. We got to Tokyo in 19 hours. Then we have to fly up to Sapporo. They pick us up in a cab. We got to get dressed in the cab, go right in the ring, and we're wrestling in this tournament. So the first night was it was a not too bad a match, about 15 minutes. The next night, we wrestled Jumbo Tsuruta and Tenaru. one's 270, the other 260, and we wrestled them for 50 minutes and won the match. The next night we get Dory Funk Jr., who was the NWA world champion, and Giant Bubba, who was 7 foot tall.
Yeah.
We wrestled them 50 some minutes, and my knee's all wrapped up. I'm limping like a son of a bee, but getting through it. The third night, we got Stan Hansen and King Kong Brody. Now, these two knuckleheads, you know, so we get in the ring and we're ready. And all of a sudden I go, Jesus, look out. Jim gets hit with a cowbell. I get hit with a chain. Out of the ring we go, through the people. They hit us with a fire extinguisher, run us into a wall. We're both cut up. And we're fighting back to the ring. And Hansen can't see very good. And this little Japanese guy got up and the chair fell. So I grabbed it and I threw it at Hansen like a Frisbee and caught him right on the bridge of the nose. Busted his nose. 40 minutes we went with them and just beat the crap out of each other. And my knee is killing me. So we keep going. We have to go through all these guys again. And we meet Hansen and Brody in the finals in the Tokyo Dome. And by now I can hardly walk. So when I finally get home from the trip, run right into the hospital, they opened up my knee and they said the cartilage fell out in 5 pieces.
Wow.
But, as you know, you wrestle hurt. You got to make those events. And it was pretty amazing. But you know, it was interesting over there because they didn't have any rules. And it was funny the first time we went over there. The guys said, it was Bob Bruggers and myself. We're the 2 rookies. We're with Blackjack Mulligan, Lars Anderson, 2 guys from South Africa, and 2 other main eventers from the States. So we're kind of the rookies. So you have to go in and you look on the board. You try to find your symbol, who you're wrestling. So we've been there 2 weeks, and we're on the first or second match. We get in the locker room, and Bob says, "Hey, I can't find my symbol." I said, "Well, it's got to be up there." So we're there 6 weeks. This is the 4th week into it. And I look up and I said, "Oh shit, you're in the main event. You're in a cage match tonight."
A cage match.
Cage match. I don't know what to do. So I went up to Giant Bubba, the promoter, and I said, "Hey, could I go out and be his manager? Because he doesn't know what to do." Yes. Now in Japan at that time, you'd get in the ring, they'd introduce you, they'd clap for both teams, give you girls, give you flowers, you'd wrestle, and it'd be dead silent through the match.
Yes.
And when it got done, they would clap, and it was dead fucking silent. So we got this cage match, and Bob's getting the crap beat out of him. And I'm walking. I remember Bobby Heenan telling me, "Hey, if you're a manager, keep moving. You know, they'll throw stuff in Japan, and I got to throw shit at you, you know." So I see this shiny thing on the floor, a little piece of metal. So I hand it to Bob, and I said, "Hit the guy right over his eyebrow. Hit him right down." And he does, and busts the guy open. The people go, whoop, and I mean, they erupt. And I'm going, holy shit. And all of a sudden, a whiskey bottle goes flying by me and hits the cage. And then I see this little Japanese guy come over the railing, and I turn to him. And as he goes to jump back over, I kick him in the ass, and over he goes. In the meantime, Bob gets beat. So the people are just, they're standing and they're throwing stuff. So I climbed over the cage into the cage. And all of a sudden I see a shadow. I look up and a chair hits me right in the head. And I see the blood. And I run up the turnbuckle with the chair, and this little Japanese guy's running, and I fire it down and hit him behind the head. Full-fledged riot. They got the riot squad there. So the next 2 weeks, Bob and I are in the main event every night. We're getting like $1,000 a week. These other guys get 5-6 grand. And we're in the main event, and we have to have escorts, police escorts to the ring every night and in and out of the arena. That was our first experience in Japan. We're 2 rookies. So
no, just like you said there, the crowd is actually, it's a crowd that tends to study the match, and just like you said, it's so quiet. And you think that, and you think that, well, no one likes the match, but then all of a sudden, in unison, they'll all go, oh, or, you know, yeah, exactly.
You got it down.
Yeah, that was. Yep.
What was your best match?
My best match?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Tag teams, tag team matches with Pat Patterson and Ray Stevens.
Yeah.
I had a few of them. This one, we were in Denver, Colorado, and Denver was just a hot town for Jim and I. And when you would come out, the old auditorium, it would pulsate. I mean, it would just woo, woo, and you're in that altitude, and Jesus, the adrenaline's going through you. We got in the ring with Patterson and Stevens, and Bobby Heenan was their manager. And in 8 minutes, all they had was a top wrist lock on us. And we'd try to get out of it, and they'd either pull our hair or our tights. And in 8 minutes, we had a full-fledged riot. People coming in the ring to help us. That's when you've really captured the audience.
Well, you told a good story. That's
It's sold. You make them believe. And then I had our draw with Nick Bockwinkel that I had a lot of people say was one of the best matches they'd ever seen within the industry. The wrestlers themselves. I mean, those are the guys you really, if you can get them, then you've done your job. But
do you watch any of the product nowadays?
I just got through watching it today. I wanted to watch what they did the other night. I have a tough time with it. Okay. I know it's changed. It's completely entertainment. I mean, Jesus Christ, this Seth Rollins, he took him over and banged his head on the mat and comes right up and he's punching him and kicking. And I mean, there's no storyline to it. There's no get those people emotionally in. It's like it's McMahon's philosophy. It's all the show and give them a rock concert.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking nothing against the wrestlers. They're all great. They're good athletes, and they've learned it, and they put in the time. But for what they're doing with it, I have a tough time. But
well, again, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe it was Vince that kind of exposed the business just so that he did not have to fall underneath athletic commissions anymore, because it's like it's not a real fight. It's a show.
Athletic taxes, that the professional athletic tax in each state. So he called it entertainment so that he could bypass that tax.
Well, I tell you, there was a big difference between the NWA, where they ran, the WWF at that time, the AWA, and the other ones, the Stu Hart up in Calgary, Fritz von Erich down in Texas, and him and Joe Blanchard, and then you had Eddie and Mike Graham in Florida. Now Charlotte, Florida, Don Owens out in Calgary, they wanted wrestling. They wanted the guys to wrestle. I was at Madison Square Garden on the second match with a guy named Johnny Rods, who got beat on TV all the time. And we went out there and we were on the second match, and we wrestled about 14 minutes, and we had the people standing. And when I walked back into the dressing room, Vince Sr. says to me, "What was that?" I said, "Well, that was wrestling." And he said, "Well, how are my guys going to follow that?" That's their problem. But their style was all punching and kicking. There was never many wrestling holds. And it was funny because Verne would send talent up to McMahon, usually 6 weeks before they were going to go in there. They would be on their TV. And then when they were finished up, they'd go up there. All the guys wrestled in the main event. He sent Pedro Morales, the world champion, to the AWA. He never made it past the second match on the card. He couldn't capture the people. They didn't like that style. They were so used to, wrestling and the holds and wanting to fight out of it, all the emotion that goes with it. And there it was just punching and kicking. And it just, so everybody he sent there never made it. I think maybe one guy made it up to maybe the third match out of maybe 5 we had, but they never wrestled main event. They were superstars in New York.
Wow.
So, that was the biggest difference in the philosophies around. Eddie Graham, you had to wrestle. Charlotte, you had to be able to wrestle. AWA, you better wrestle. Stu Hart, you better wrestle. Same thing down with Fritz Eric, Von Erich and that group. But New York, they had the big markets and they captured them all and they sold their product the way they did. So
you did that movie. You did that movie, Highlander, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How long did you do that match for? I mean, how long? Because I've done some movie work, I did a few scenes of Rowdy Roddy Piper. We did an hour and a half Broadway, and they only used like 3 seconds of the,
we wrestled. We wrestled about 20, 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Nonstop with the Freebirds.
Mm-hmm.
They shot the whole thing, but it was.
Oh, did they?
We just did our thing, and they didn't ask us to do anything that we couldn't do. We just said go in and have the match.
Yeah,
that's what we did.
You still get residuals from that?
No.
They
paid us all. I think the talent, we got $500, and then we were with, it was called Wrestling USA. This is when McMahon was starting to take over, and the promoters came together, and they were going to, all work together. Well, the egos got in the way, and they couldn't work together. But that was a combined card. So I think they all probably, I don't know what the movie company paid them, but they all got their little portion, and we all got $500. And we weren't on the guild yet.
Right.
We weren't considered actors.
Right.
And we never will be.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the beautiful things about being a professional wrestler. You're already a natural stunt person as well. I mean, you don't need anyone to step on in there for you. So
don't let Mick Foley hear you say that, man.
No,
Nick would beat your ass. I guess
Mick took certain bumps to the extreme, though.
Yeah, he really did. Yeah.
You could have almost laid a few bets there that will he make it? Will he not? I don't know, because there's
Yeah, I met Mick when he was first starting, and I got it. I said, "You're not going to last long in this business, pal." But he did a great job,
Great job, man. Outstanding.
Yeah. You wrestled too? Did you wrestle?
Yeah, I wrestled over in Japan.
Did you?
Inoki, yeah.
Where did you and Dan meet then?
Arizona State.
Yeah,
he was the assistant coach under Bobby Douglas when I was a freshman.
Yeah. Don lived with a couple of my younger brothers, so I knew Don much like a younger brother, because I go there and visit and stuff like that, and I always Don basically saw that I was in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and he contacted me about that and see if I could help him get in there. And I would tell people that I just helped Don get his foot in the door. He kicked it wide open because he's had most viewed matches, because he's been at some slugfest. Yeah.
It really is.
Wasn't smart enough to get my head out of
the way. Well, Verne was tough. I mean, he was tough. He treated everybody the same way.
Well, you have to, though. I mean, that's what some promoters don't understand. You got to treat everybody the same way. It's kind of like these like your children here. You can't be just spoiling one child and not spoil everybody else in the process.
Well, he was. I remember I got complimented 3 times from a little kid all the way up. The first time I was a high school football game, and I completed like 12 out of 13 passes, and for 300 yards, and ran for 100 and some. And he came back and said, "That's the greatest game. I'm so proud of you." And the next time, I'm trying to think of the next time. The third time I remember was we wrestled. I wrestled with him as a tag team partner against Nick Bockwinkel and Saito. And Verne was in his 60s now, out of retirement for this match. And he grabbed me afterwards. He said, "You're better than I ever was."
Wow.
And I looked at him. He said, "You controlled that match. You made the whole thing. You made that match and made me in it." So that was about it.
Yeah, Brad Reagan's broke me into the business.
Oh, well, Brad's a great guy. Verne trained Brad, and then Brad kind of took over the camp.
Yeah.
from Verne and Brad was, remember Leon White?
Yeah, yeah.
Van Vader, or Big Van Vader?
Yep. I wrestled him in a match over there.
How'd that go?
Went better for me than it did for him.
Good. Yeah, he was playing football at University of Colorado, and then he played for the Rams. And so we're wrestling in Denver, and after the matches were done in the having dinner, and he walks up with his agent, and his agent said, "Greg, I'd like to talk to you for a minute. Can we have a little private conversation?" And I said, "Sure." So I went and sat with him. He said, "This is Leon White. He's one of the toughest men I've ever met in my life, and he wants to wrestle professionally." And I looked at him and I said, "What makes you think you can wrestle?" "Well, I go to the bars and I kick the crap out of these guys." I said, "Well, these aren't bar fighters. These are professional wrestlers." I said, "There isn't a guy around here that couldn't kick your ass." And he looked at me and I said, "Yeah, you're 340 pounds. I'm 200. I'm not afraid of you. I'll go with you." And he looked at me. So finally I told my dad about him, and they gave him a chance, and he came out. I told Brad about him.
Yeah.
Brad got him in the ring, and Leon was about 340 at the time. Oh, within about 20 minutes, he had him screaming for his mom, and he was crying. Of course, we all had to lay it on him then. "Oh, hey, you big puss! I thought you could handle everybody."
Brad's a machine, man.
Oh, he was a machine. Yeah, he stretched him pretty good.
Yeah.
But Brad, Vern did that with all of us, and that's the way he wanted it. And when we all went in that first week, he got stressed, and we had Billy Robinson as one of our trainers too, and he was big on submission holds. And at the end of it, they'd show us a submission hold. They'd show you about 3 or 4 of them, and then each one of us had to take a turn to get on the mat. And then you'd be on there with Billy or Vern, and they'd say, "Okay, there's the arm. Grab it." Oh, and you go to, you got to think, "Oh, yeah, here's what we're going to." And as you do it, they reverse it, shove your foot right up your ass, have you screaming. But, we did that for an hour every training camp too. So we learned submission wrestling. But that way, you went out and you got in trouble, or you got into, when we went into locker rooms, we were really well respected, and people were a little back offish,
Yeah, a little bit intimidated probably because of your heritage.
I'm sure when you walked in to Dan, I mean, they were all, "Oh, Jesus Christ, this guy's gonna kill us."
But I did get a chance to meet both Billy Robinson and Lou Thez when I was first going over to Japan, work for the UWFI organization. And but I mean, they were very kind, they were very complimentary, because they were simply just watching how I was flowing, and I was actually doing amateur wrestling techniques and some Greco-Roman and a little bit of freestyle, all in professional wrestling, because it's like, for the first time I ever walked into the Ultimate Fighting Championship cage, I ended up doing a belly back suplex to my first opponent ever, but they had never seen anyone bodily pick up another individual and just do a belly to back suplex like that. And they're like, the crowd was like in horror that I'm going to break this guy in half and the whole 9 yards. I'm thinking it's a very safe technique, as long as you just tuck your chin to your chest and
as long as you know how to fall. Most of those guys don't know how to fall.
Yes. Well, you learn that real quick. It's so surprising, but that's what I found out about professional wrestling. A lot of them are good talkers, they're good punchers, they're good punchers, kickers, stompers, that kind of thing. But just like how we started this conversation, the marquee still says wrestling. Give me some wrestling, and that's where I was. I mean, that's where I was very fortunate to have someone like a Jim Cornette attached to me being there, because I'm not going to get on a microphone and go blah 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 blah. Look at me, and that type of thing. I'm just the kind of person that, I'm going to try to dismantle you using wrestling techniques, tie up and do different things that they weren't used to having done to you,
Yeah, I know. And that's what it's all about. And that's a very the same thing. Wrestling on the marquee, we're giving them wrestling.
Did you ever get a chance to go up to the Hart residence or anything like that and go down to the dungeon? Because again, there is a lot of similarities between the Harts taught a lot of amateur wrestling background, and then what you know what you guys.
Vern and Stu were good friends, but I never got up there.
Okay.
Fact, you know, we were so busy and things were rolling so good in the AWA. There really was no reason to go anywhere.
Yeah, no need to. I mean, you just.
But
I just know that they, the dungeon did a lot of cool things. But I mean, when you really look
a lot
at
of the same things, yeah.
Yeah, but the dungeon was actually a very small operation. I don't know. It was kind of surprising when you saw how big this little wrestling room really was there, because they did a match between Owen Hart and Ken Shamrock, where I'm the special guest referee, and I'm thinking you couldn't have fit really anybody else in there. It's like, how are they going to pull off a match? And yet they did pull off, match for about, I don't know, about eight or 10 minutes type of a match.
Yeah,
inside that thing.
Yeah.
So
no, it's just they've lost the art of it. That's the way I feel about wrestling today. It's strictly entertainment. It's costumes. It's personalities. They write their interviews for them. Vern said, just talk from your heart. And he used to tell everybody, when they'd come in, everybody's a little shy, and he says, let your real personality. That's what we have to get out of you. And we'd do interviews, and when I coached, I worked for WCW for a while, and I had CM Punk. He's frustrated. He can't make it in wrestling, and I said, and he's really pissed off, and he's doing these interviews, and I said, who are you pissed off at? He said, well, Vince McMahon. I said, well, give me an interview, how you really feel about him. Tell me how you really feel. Open up. I don't give a shit. Tell me and let him go. And I said, that's what you have to do. You have to let that inner feeling, so it goes through the crowd, through the people. So either they're going to like that about you, or they're not going to like it.
Right.
Vern used to say, let that inner self of yours come out. Be who you really are. I used to have to take the kids out, sometimes get them drunk. And when they're drunk, I said, hey, now that's your real personality. Give me that tomorrow. But it's hard with some people. They want to do it, but they're so intimidated or shy. I don't know, but in that sport and that world, you have to let that personality come out, or you're not going to make it.
Yeah, well, that is the big difference. Which you do all this training, and you're in a more of a guarded type of an environment. But now when you walk out in front of this live crowd, that's when you really find out if this individual has what it takes. Because some people, they get intimidated by a large crowd, and they might get them to choke up or something like that, and they can't perform. And then other people, it's like the biggest adrenaline dump in the world. They rise to the occasion. So
what did you do?
No, I mean,
you rose to the occasion.
Yeah, I had no choice. I had no choice in the matter there. That's where.
How did you like working in the UFC?
Well, I mean, the UFC, again, to go back in time, because the UFC has changed so much over the years. I mean, when Don and I were still doing it, it was still known as no holds barred. They only had a couple basic rules. I mean, Don was the first time that they even did a David versus Goliath match. I mean, before then, it was you could weigh anything before that. But then Don was actually part of one event that was called David versus Goliath, where literally they were matching up all these giants against smaller stature type of individuals there. So, and it was just different types of themes is what they came up with. But it was it's just something different. I mean, honestly, other than scrapping with my brothers growing up, I never really was in a fight, and scrapping with my brothers might have been just going for that last pork chop that was on the table. That's pretty vicious right there.
That'll cause a big fight.
Don has seen me at the buffet a few times. He knows. I go, don't ever cut in front of me in front of that buffet. I'll take you out. I don't care if you're a little old lady at that point. Then I'll still take you out.
My dad came from a family of 17.
Holy moly! Where did he fall on the ladder on that one?
Well, he was second. It was brother Will, and then Vern, his sister Ruby, his dad Jerry, and his mother passed away. His dad remarried and had 13 more. So he when he went to Minnesota, he actually, I mean, he had nothing. His dad didn't want him to wrestle. He wanted him to work on the farm. And he ended up staying with his aunt and uncle, and he'd walk to Robbinsdale High School from Hamel, Minnesota, was where Brad was, you know, that's where he had his camp in Hamel. And to Robbinsdale had to be 15 miles. And sometimes he'd stay over with people there, but he'd have to come back and clean the barns and all that and do it. So that's where he really got his dad wanted him to quit school and he worked in his bar for a while, him and his brother, Will was 11 and Vern was 9. And they had, when
he wanted to work at the bar.
Burns used to say, yeah, when the beer kegs, our job was when the beer kegs got empty, we had to change them.
Okay, change them out, yeah.
What we'd do is we'd lay down on our back and one of us would turn the spout on to make sure it was drained out. So we'd lay under it. And we started drinking beer at 9 years old.
Oh my gosh.
So,
wow.
Yeah. So he had a tough life growing up, but you know, he did well.
Yeah, but those those are just the times were just the times were just a different type of times. I mean, it's you know, just during the pressure time era on both sides of my grandparents. On my mother's side, they had a moonshine business, stuff like that going because they got to make money. You got to make money somehow. So again, they had whatever they could do to make ends meet. So
it was different times, but you know, that's why he always wanted. I mean, when we grew up, he wouldn't give us anything. We had to earn it. I remember he had an acre, and the first time I was only about, I don't know, 10, 11 years old. I had raked the yard in the fall. Raked this whole damn thing. It took me all day to rake the thing. And I get home and I'm pretty proud of myself. And he said, yeah, you missed a spot over there. And I said, shit, there's only a few leaves there. He said, well, tomorrow, do the whole yard over again. He says, you do it right the first time, or you don't.
Wow.
Yeah. So I had a lot of lessons like that.
Wow. That's pretty tough.
Yeah, it was. But you know what? I did the same thing with my kids then, you know, and especially in this era now, they need more discipline than they ever have.
Oh yeah, there's we could easily spend a couple hours about talking about today's world of me, and I need my cell phone, I need this, I need that, and it's like going, you know, no, you don't. It's just kind of a crazy world in a lot of different ways, and you know, it's a great device. Like I'm using my laptop here. I'm just to be able to communicate. It's a great tool, but you can get consumed in that tool though as well. So it's what I mean, if you don't mind me asking, what are some of the projects that you do nowadays? What preoccupies your days?
I'll tell you what we're doing right now. We started in fact, Dan, I got to get you on board with this. We started a company. Steve Rosenthal, he did back in the 80s, started action figures. He went to Vince McMahon and wanted to do action figures, and Vince didn't want anything to do with them. So he came to Vern and he wanted to do action figures of the wrestlers. So Vern we went and did them with him, and he ran it for 8 years. It was the #1 selling toy for Remco Toys for 8 years. And then he got out of the business. He retired. And 2 or 3 years ago, he called me up and he said, hey, how would you like to get back in the action figure business? I said, well, what do you have in mind? And he told me, I said, you know, there's not much you can, I mean, everybody's got their thing right now. So let's do something different. Let's represent the wrestling world the way it started back in the 50s. They've never had action figures. And those guys were gods. You know, the DuPont network was nationwide, ran from 1950 to 1957. You got Lou Thez, Verne Gagne, Hans Schmidt, Hardboiled Haggerty, Yukon Eric, Killer Kowalski, Dick the Bruiser, the Crusher. Let's recognize those people and build up and stay away from the WWE. Let's grab people that have never had the action figures.
Sure, I get it.
So I have signed over 200 people to contracts. We've got men, women, midgets, referees, and announcers. and I would love to have you on board.
This is something we'll discuss that at a different time, I know, but no, that's
different time.
I mean,
We're
action
going to
figures.
discuss it.
Yeah, I mean, like action figures are just they're huge especially with collectors.
That's the target we're selling to. So our first 6 came out. We did Verne and Luthez, Brody and Hansen from the 60s and from the 70s and 60s, 70s, and then Magnum TA and Kerry Von Erich. And we call them our Ultra Series 1. You can go to powertown.com. Powertown, where our theme is Powertown, where wrestling lives on. And you'll see those action figures on the market right now. They say the best figures ever produced.
That is called, you said powertown.com?
Powertown.com, yeah.
Okay, I'll look that up a little bit later.
Powertown Wrestling. I don't know how he put the thing, but and
I mean, but is there, if anyone wants to contact you to say for another interview or to, I mean, it's possible, maybe even discuss more about the action figures, stuff like that. Is there like a way of contacting you? Is there an email address? Is there phone numbers or what?
Well, if they go to Powertown, they can probably find all of us. Magnum TA is one of my partners, and then we've got a couple of collectors, and then Steve, and the figures came out phenomenal. They just announced Series 2 coming out in February. It costs us $27,000 a mold.
For one mold?
For one mold.
Wow.
So they're really spectacular. The first group that came back, the legs broke off of them. So it set us back about 9 months. But now we got our second series, and now we own the Remco line. So we're going to come out with another Remco line.
Apologize for the dog. It just he gets a little rambunctious when something's coming by.
She's looking at me.
Yeah.
But we'd love to have you on board because we're representing wrestling. That's what we're representing, and the people that built the industry.
No, I mean, it's up again. That'll be we'll discuss this at a different time.
We will discuss it. So
I don't
know if I have your phone number or not, but
well, again, in fact, we contact you. What I'll do is I'll make certain that
my email address.
I'll either give you a phone call, send you a text, something like that, and I'll say this is Dan.
Let's get both of you on there. Let's get both of you.
Well, yeah, again, it's like Team Mustache. Come on,
Yeah. No, really. I mean, that's what collectors and the sport and the people that built it, and you guys are a big part of it. Without it,
but that's where that's the funny part is like a lot of times some people watch some videos or something like that, and they'll either confuse. Well, when my hair was all darker, so I'll put it that way. When my hair was darker, they would confuse me for being either Don Fry or Don Fry would be me or something like that, and it was kind of comical. Now it's kind of like we're about as different as night and day because my hair's but the funny part is I always tell people that in like psychology 101, I use some of the same ring psychology that I learned in professional wrestling, how to work this crowds, because I was a professional wrestler first. Then when I climbed into this cage, I already knew how to make the crowd love me. I knew how to make that crowd hate me just by never even speaking a word. What is my body language telling them right there? How am I walking to that cage? How is my facial demeanor taking place? Even by what I wore, it tells a story about you.
Yep, and that's what we want, and that's what we're telling the story. And I'll tell you what, we've got Walmart, Target, both calling us now, Costco. Everybody wants to be a part of it, and like I say, we're representing the people that built this industry, and the people, and the ones.
Have you ever thought again? I just as you're talking about that, you pitched me this idea. Have you ever thought about going on Shark Tank? And talking about. Always, I like that program. I enjoy watching it.
I've thought about it. We're trying to do it on our own. But we could it would help us if we could get an influx of some cash in right now. But Steve Rosenthal thinks that in 2 or 3 years that this thing will be worth an awful lot of money.
Sure. No, again, the action figures it's a great industry to be in.
We want to make money with it, but my whole goal, and Magnum TA, who's one of my partners on there, He's been working. Our goal is to tell the story of wrestling and the people that built the industry. It wasn't Vince McMahon that built this industry or AEW.
Yeah.
You know, it was the Stu Harts and the Verne Gagnes and the Bill Watts. And
no, I agree. It was that old territory type of aspect that took place that people. Again, as I said earlier, I wish I had been alive during that era, because that would have better suited me.
It would have. You would have fit. I'll tell you what, you'd have fit into the AWA, because that was Verne's whole theory.
Yeah.
Poor Brad, he just didn't have the personality to, a great guy, phenomenal wrestler, love him to death, but he didn't get over with the public.
Mm-hmm.
It just too blah. You have charisma.
Well, but let's see, you say that, you say that now, but if you ever really watched a lot of my matches in professional wrestling, not once did I ever speak really on that microphone and stuff like that. My whole aspect was, I want to wrestle.
Dan, if you'd have been with Verne, you would have got over like a son of a
well,
because he loved wrestlers, and he would teach you how to be able to talk and get over. And yeah, you wanted to wrestle, but your personality, you got a great personality. It comes out here on the air.
No, again, well, that's where I'm good when talking with people. I'm good. Otherwise, I'll sit back. I'll be quiet. I always like to hear. I'm always telling people you can learn something at all times. So I'm always sitting back there, and I listen to people and listen what's going on. Even like in my early times, working for Vince, I would show up there. I'm the only guy that's showing up on time, and I'm getting in there early, and there's nobody else here. They want you to be like early in the afternoon. I'm like, I'm the only person here. And then, wasn't too long that one of the road agents just pulls me aside there, Dan, like going, that rule really does not pertain to you. And I'm thinking, my mind, I'm thinking, well, why doesn't it pertain to me? Well, again, I learned real quick, because when I started watching the locker room dynamics, and I seen how many derelicts, I'll use the word derelicts, how many derelicts were involved in that industry, and the whole company was more or less a babysitting job, because they didn't know what kind of condition you were going to show up in. They made, but they such a, again, to Vince's credit, he had a well-oiled machine to where they had seamstresses there that if you lost your outfit, they will whip you up in a matter of the next couple hours. They'll whip you up another outfit for you to wear. If you got circles underneath your eyes, they'll dust out the circles. They'll sober you up. Literally, they'll do everything for you except wrestle the match. And even then, if it's on the night of editing, they can edit out all the bad stuff and still make you look like a star.
Yeah.
The way it was, I was very impressed about how everything was laid out and how they did everything. It just, and what I looked at is like, the talent did not realize what an opportunity they had. And they still fell into this thing like of wanting to go out and just getting shit-faced. And then and driving on to the next thing, I'm thinking, the same 24 hours that these guys are wrestling one match, I actually lined up 2 other gigs. I'd go to a speaking engagement. I'd do a seminar earlier in the day. And so I got in the same 24 hours that they're making 1 paycheck, I'm pulling down 3 paychecks.
Yeah.
My time was gone. I wanted to make the most of my time.
Yeah.
So, but
anyway, thanks for having me on tonight.
No. I know we're getting that golden time for feeding, and I've got a dog that's starting to act up there. I'm gonna have to go feed him. So I'm going to, Greg. I mean, one more time. You said
Terry and I are we're starting a podcast in January with a company, and I'd like to call you and have you on one time.
No, it'd be great. I mean, what we do is, like I said, at the end there, I'll make sure that I get all your contact information from Tony, stuff like that, and I'll send you either email or at least send you a text. I'm going to be bowing out here pretty quick because I got to go take care of some things.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good enough.
No,
thanks again.
Appreciate having you on here tonight, Vern Gagne. It's been fantastic, and look forward to chatting again.
Do it again, and have a Merry Christmas.
All right.
All right.
As well. Everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching another episode of Dan and Don's Toxic Masculinity. You better like, subscribe, and share, or I'm going to come to your house.